Well, thank you guys very much. I just wanted, I'm not offering any kind of resolutions or anything like that. Um, and I know this is a path that I've worn down pretty well for all of you, but being a support staff, I feel like I want to speak on behalf of support staff throughout our state. And I don't want to get emotional here, but what has been happening to support staff before this pandemic, and it is really like everything else that we've all been through, has really been highlighted. I want to just remind everybody that we are an important part of our schools, our communities, and to our students' education. And what has happened during this pandemic has shown me again that we are constantly forgotten about and not respected. And what I said in my earlier speech months ago was how educators feel so disrespected and forgotten about. Well, try being a support staff. When a student comes to school, they probably see 4 or 5 support staff before they see their administrator or their teacher. That's just a fact. The first person they see in the morning is their bus driver. Then when they get into school, they probably see the secretary, custodians, maybe some paraprofessionals, maybe their security officer before they even enter the classroom. During this time, we had to fight to get included in the state's grant program, the hazard pay program. That was months long. Now in the summer, if you're a K-8 paraprofessional, the summer school grant program hazard pay, COVID hazard pay, is $1,000 for a teacher, $250 for a support staff. Now, what do you think that says to every single support staff? We're worth 1/4. 1/4. It's not right. It is not right. Those 2 bills that I worked with for support staff to be able to apply for grants to go to college to earn their degree and help solve the teacher shortage, that would not only help solve part of the teacher shortage, also diversity, retainment, all of those things. It's going nowhere. I'm not fooling myself. I can't even get a committee hearing on it. What are we supposed to do? In our schools, the best way that I can explain what a support staff does is we are like spackle on just a completely devastated wall. We fill every crack, every nook and cranny, and smooth that stuff out so that our students can have a better education. And we are constantly overlooked, never part of the discussion. It is not right. And it breaks my heart that we have to consistently fight and speak loud and louder and louder and louder, and it's still overlooked. 1/4. How would you feel about that? And what you guys do? I'm a special education paraprofessional for 29 years. Let me remind you what special education paraprofessionals do in classrooms. They're giving catheterizations, tracheotomies, not to mention all of the toileting duties that they're doing, feeding tubes, suctioning, and we're worth 1/4. And in the end, when the grant program that happened, that's right now, in the end, I'm a post-secondary paraprofessional. I'm not even included in that. I don't get the state money. And I was there every single day. As a matter of fact, I'm a job coach. I was out working in the community in the worst parts of our pandemic. And I get nothing. Now, my district stepped up and noticed that mistake, and they're going to cover us, which is unbelievable. And I'm eternally grateful for that. But if they didn't, nothing. Not one bit of acknowledgement for what it is that support staff do. And I know I'm a pain in the dupa I bring this up all the time. but I'm not going to apologize for this. I'm not going to apologize. I know we have so many different school staff here in many different positions, but we are a council, the educator, the governor's educator advisory council, educators. We are educators. We are part of the educational team. This has really, really hurt me. And for us to not be, now I'm not speaking on behalf of me because my district goes year round anyways, but for K through 8 paraprofessionals that come in to not be available, to get 1/4 the payment was another slap in the face. And I know many of you that have been on this council have heard me go down this road many, many times, but here it is again. So it proves my point over and over and over and over and over again. We are always left behind, always. Try, a great example of this in Detroit, the para-union president, who I know very, very well and is an unbelievably beautiful, knowledgeable person. When those teachers were getting their hazard pay money from the district, not talking about the state, from the district, they completely left the parapros out and forced them to go into the buildings while the teachers could stay home. They had to bargain for over a month to get what the teachers were getting as hazard pay while staying home. So you think that there's a teacher shortage? Wait till there's a support staff shortage and see how your buildings are going to run. I don't care how great of a teacher you are. You aren't doing anything unless the bus driver picks them up, unless the custodians clean those buildings, the food service workers give out that food, and the paraprofessionals do their jobs in the classrooms with these students in these communities. And we are a more diversified group than the teachers are. And that is proven by data. And yet here we are.
So Jeff, while you're pausing, Mandy did have a comment in there if she wants to add something.
I'm sorry to go. I'm not sorry for my content. I'm sorry for going on. So let me make that clear.
My comment is absolutely in support. I think when you're expressing this and we see your passion, it's not against this council or our roles. It's in general shouting into the void that there's a need, because our district is already experiencing those shortages. We are desperate for paraprofessionals. We're trying everything we can to recruit, but they're looking at the job and then the level of respect you get, and they'll work someplace else. Because exactly. When we treat our support staff this way, why would they choose this position? I was in the bus garage yesterday because our head of transportation, who is essential to us, is very, very ill and in the hospital. And I'm talking to the bus drivers who they know every kid who's going on their bus. They are the first person they see, and we can't get enough bus drivers. And that was huge. In our areas, there were people who didn't get access to education because we didn't have anyone who's willing to do that role because of how they're treated. So I do wonder in general if this is something that we want to tackle as a governor's council, to specifically talk about recruitment of support staff and the level of respect and attention, and maybe even like a PR campaign, because I don't think people realize what paraprofessionals do. I don't think they realize how important bus drivers are and how important food staff is. I mean, all summer long, we were doing grab and go breakfast and lunch, and that's how our people got fed. And this was at the height of pandemic. So I would love to propose the idea that this is something a subcommittee tackles, and maybe we have to flesh it out a little more, but it's important work, and I think we need to do it. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you very much.
Marcus has a comment.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. And to Jeff and Mandy's point, I think it was just last week in the news, they had a story about the bus driver, I think it was in North Carolina, and the gunman came on with an M16, and they were like kindergarten students in the back, and the bus driver didn't break a sweat. He drove the person that was on the bus. He was able to get the students out. I think part of it, look, when you're a special education teacher and you have that touchstone, I'm used to like that marriage between support staff, teacher, parapro, occupational therapist, OT, PT, speech. I can go through the alphabet soup because those are all the individuals I need to educate that child. But once again, this goes back to the mindset. There needs to be a fundamental shift, a reimagining of how education is done. And I'm not sure we're getting that because everybody in this Brady Bunch square gets it. But we need to talk to these wonderful policymakers who are clueless.
Exactly.
We need to direct this venom, and venom's good, to the people that sit down with a pencil and pen and they're coming up with these absurd policies. Or otherwise, if they're not hearing what's happening on the ground, if they're not hearing the hell that people are catching, there is no change. So I'm almost at the point where I want to recommend that every time we have a meeting, somebody from the educational committee from Lansing is like present, or or minimal, this tape goes to them so they have to view this, to understand what's going on in education. Otherwise, it's forever clueless, forever.
But Marcus, it even is on you're right, absolutely, 100%. There's a disconnect between the legislature and the fundamental understanding of how schools work, how they move through their day, and how dependent they are. But let me just give one more example. I know of a school district that gave each of their teachers 10 COVID days in case they had to quarantine. They gave none to the support staff who had to go unpaid if they got COVID. It's disgusting. They're probably making 20 grand and they're going to make them go unpaid if they happen to catch a pandemic, COVID. It's anyway.
So Kathy's off the screen, but Zainab did put a comment in there.
Well, Jeff, we're always happy to listen to you because I learned from you. I've learned to use the term educator versus teacher. I've become more aware of the educational community because of you. But I just want to say, we've been doing this for a couple of years, a lot of us, and much like the standardized testing issue, I think what we run up against is this lack of political will to change anything. And I just don't know. I think we can change things. I just don't know how we can tackle that in particular, because that seems to be our biggest impediment to getting anything done. I mean, we've had these multiple existential crises as a council, like, okay, so how do we make ourselves more effective as a council? Even now we're saying, well, how do we make ourselves more of an advisory council rather than just a recommendation council, right? And there seems to be a gap between the political elites in Lansing and us. And I don't know who fills it, how to fill it, what we do to fill it. But I think this issue and the standardized testing issue in particular, I think and I'm talking about, we're all here for students. Ethically speaking, for our students, these are probably two of the most important issues to address immediately. So that's my comment. I'm kind of throwing it into the ether right now. And I don't know if anyone has anything to say to that.
Thank you, Zainab.
It looks like Leah has a comment.
I did. I actually had a question. Marcus, twice today I've heard you say policymakers aren't educators and policymakers need to pay attention. And when you say policymakers, I'm curious as somebody who works for the department, because policymakers are typically Department of Education folks. Do you mean policymakers or lawmakers at the legislature, or both of those things?
I mean, our wonderful elected officials in the House of Representatives, in the Senate. And we all know and that's one of the major problems. I'm not even sure if they're aware of this council, the vast majority. And if they're the ones that's pushing these bills through, teacher evaluation laws, 40% growth component, or otherwise it's ineffective, budgets, so parapros don't have equal pay. They're not addressing the fact of the teacher shortage. We have, it's almost, we all have almost like a mandate. We have to be the ones that's raising the hell to motivate that change. Because if we keep, well, is it gonna come from that direction? It has to come from us. And that's like something that we have to like, let that marinate at our next, well, maybe in the month of July when we're not meeting. And I think that's like, we have to begin there.
Thank you. I just want to make sure if part of the message was for the department that I was carrying it appropriately for you.
I'm sorry, I want to jump in. I put comment in the chat. I'm sorry. To Marcus's point, Representative Darian I can't say his last name, Camilleri, who I'm in Dearborn. He's a downriver representative. So he's like maybe 15, 20 minutes away from me. He's a former teacher. So, and I've run into him. So I've talked to him. And I think he may be one of the only folks in Lansing who actually understands like the day-to-day functionality of a school. And so I think it may behoove us to like potentially invite him, and I don't know, just a thought.
Before that, Eva had a comment. I just want to make sure that's not lost.
I just wanted to comment on, add a little bit more about Marcus, what Marcus said, then I'm done. So not only should those lawmakers just take a look at, our video and that, it should be mandatory for them to spend a week in a classroom. A week in a school, not a day, an entire week. Then that way they know exactly what takes place, because a lot of them are not only out of touch, they don't know what's going on, and they're making these laws. So that's my only one comment,
Sorry, Eva, by the way.
That's okay. You're
Passion rules the game, right? And then Gigi.
First of all, Jeff, never apologize for anything that you say to us, that you put in writing. You are standing up. We respect this. We learned so much from you, and we want to support you, and we want to be part of this fight. Zina mentioned Representative Camilleri, and I'm not pronouncing his name right, but he is the one who has spearheaded the school library legislation as well. I'm very grateful for what you did today with updating the GEAC school library recommendation, and that document, even though it's not going to completely push through those bills, is very powerful. Similarly, and I was just guided by Jeff's example earlier in the fall when he asked for the endorsement for the similar bills for support staff. Let's keep doing that approach. It doesn't cost anything, and yet it is a tool to put forward these important issues that need to be acted upon. Now, the other thing that I would be very grateful for, and Lee, I don't know if this is possible, but some type of a nod from your higher ups at MDE, if Superintendent Michael Rice could also be a spokesperson for standing behind what Jeff is talking about right now. And that's certainly, a very complicated issue, but I just wanted to throw that out there. But Jeff, you stay with it, and we're here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to speak on that. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate your suggestions and your kind words as well. I don't want to put Owen on the spot, but I would love to hear your perspective because of how you've come through your education. You were a parapro and now a teacher. again, and you don't have to answer, I am putting you totally on the spot, and I know you're gonna write in your diary that Jeff's an idiot. But I mean, do you have anything to add? Like, did I say anything that you agree with or that you have found in your time as well?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Jeff, and I think we all do. And I know, you know, as a para, I struggled. I was a para while I was in college getting my teaching degree. And so you know, I was that case where I was working full time and going to school part time to finish my degree. And I still like, I think one of the indicators of how difficult it can be when you're in that kind of a case is the fact that I had to basically survive on charity to do my student teaching because I couldn't work as a para while I was student teaching. Those things overlap in the middle of the day. And you have to work for free for a semester in order to finish your degree. And it's not like you make enough as a para that I could have saved up beforehand and covered that cost. You know, I ended up surviving because my in-laws gave me a very generous loan that got us through that couple of months. But you know, that I think that goes to show the larger issue that we want to build these pathways for people who are already in the profession, who are already passionate about this and have valuable skills that are useful. Because I can tell you that I learned so much as a parapro that I never learned in my college classes that helped make me a better educator, you know, right my first year being a teacher. And so I learned so much from that experience, and yet there was no pathway, there was no assistance, and we undervalue those people tremendously. It's hard for me to articulate it properly, but you know, I'm fully experienced it just as you do, Jeff, and I saw it from, and now I see it from both perspectives, where I was in that position and now I see how others are less valued, or you know, it seems strange to me that you're right. There are many aspects in which my school and my classroom and the other classrooms in my building would not function without our support staff. So it seems silly to me that these people are not as valued as teachers.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your perspective on that. Thank you. And you're right. As a para, you learn, well, because you're part of the team, right? When you're in college, going to be a teacher, they don't teach that that teamwork aspect of it, but you have that experiences, and that's part of what I bring, you know, to that bill. Is one of the things that I mention all the time is, as a para, you are a part of a larger team, and they don't teach that in college. They don't teach that in any class. There's no team building that I'm aware of anyway. So, but thank you, Owen. I appreciate that. Thanks again,
Thanks, Jeff.
everybody.
Yep, thanks, Jeff. So any other points of order or business that we need to make, any resources or anything we need to ask Leah or her team for, or anything we need to let Angela know to prep for June as we get ready to close out here? Okay. Oh, sorry, Ben.
I just wanted to know if there's a tangible decision made in regard to what Jeff is putting out on the table. And Mandy, I really appreciated your comment as far as the subcommittee. I think this is worthy of it. And back to Zainab, what you said, these are things that obviously there's so much that needs to be addressed right now. But these are two things, standardized testing and the parapro situation, that impacts our kids so, I mean, every single solitary day. And so I'm just wondering, do we have something that we can start in June on the agenda to address this, so that it doesn't just stay in our memory banks as a passionate discussion, something that's tangible? And I don't know, Jeff, if you had any ideas, or if you've already talked about this with Greg and Lee, I wasn't sure.
Because this wasn't an agenda item, we have to be conscientious about actually discussing it. So what I will do is I will follow up with Angela right away, and she'll figure out how to get that on the agenda. One of the things we'll struggle with, of course, is that we're already in committee, And so trying to add something to existing committees could be complicated. And perhaps Angela Benander will have some ideas about how we can, maybe she does want to put us in front of an education committee in the legislature or something, although I don't know if those committee chairs would welcome our participation necessarily. But yeah, we just have to be careful about having discussions about non-agenda items. But Angela, is it safe to assume that we'll follow up soon?
Absolutely. I think this is very important and we need to follow up on this.